Hello, everyone. Welcome to Supply Chain Visit for Pharma, a podcast where we guide the manufacturing and supply chain leaders to be the wizards of change in the area of digital transformation. I'm your host, Dr. Evren Ozkaya, founder and CEO of Supply Chain Wizard. Today, I'm joined by Justin Wood, Chief Services Officer at Sequence. Justin, welcome.
Thank you very much. Just glad to be here.
Yeah, so you're joining us from North Carolina. I'm sure it's also sunny as in New Jersey. Excited to have you here. And the topic that we're going to mostly dive into today is the talent crisis and talent shortage in pharmaceutical industry. But before we do that, why don't you briefly introduce yourself for our audience?
Yes, thank you very much, Evren. So, as you said, I'm Justin Wood, the Chief Services Officer for Sequence. Just a little bit of a background on me. Graduated from NC State University with a degree in engineering, mechanical engineering, and started my career at GE as a manufacturing engineer, where I just got an opportunity to be thrown into an environment where I gained a strong foundation in manufacturing and quality. And then that was the point in my life where my career took a change and went into life sciences, where I've been for the last 18 years. And so through that 18 years, I've focused heavily around process control systems with, design and commissioning and qualification for those systems. And then, later on was able to get into manufacturing execution systems as well. So majority of my career has been spent in that world as a consultant supporting different digital solutions and how they're used in manufacturing. Today, as you mentioned earlier, I am the Chief Services Officer for Sequence. And so I've been with Sequence for over 10 years. And now I'm more focused on developing strong consulting teams and helping our clients navigate, full life cycle projects of CQV and digital enablement. And quite honestly, my passion now is loving to build environments where our people can grow, but also where our clients, don't just see us as service providers, but they also see us as partners and in a journey to help deliver critical therapies to patients.
Yes. So Sequence is a very interesting company. You have a very nice building down there in North Carolina, focused on training, capability building. Can you tell us more about what the company does? What's the mission?
Yeah, so our mission, our mission is pretty simple. I mean, we are all about improving the quality of life. And I make that very generic statement, but it's improving the quality of life of not only the people that work here at Sequence, but also the patients. I talked about that. We have a passion, we have a connection, as all of us do, to someone who needs critical therapies. And so we look at the patients and improving the quality of life of patients, improving the quality of life of the people that work here at Sequence and the communities in which we serve as well. So that is our mission. That is what drives us every day. As a company in general, we actually were founded back in 2002 with a focus on computer system validation, and we were a very small company. But then over the years, we've grown into a full service consulting organization. Now we have over 200 employees, where we are heavily focused in the Warren area right now of North Carolina. But we also have an office up in Boston. And so we're heavily kind of focused in Eastern, but we do support a variety of projects across the U.S. Primarily, we focus on commissioning, qualification, and validation, as well as supporting digital solution services across basically all aspects of pharmaceutical manufacturing. And so what I mean by that is that, it includes facilities, utilities, equipment, labs, and computerized systems. And what you mentioned earlier about what makes us unique, we built a mock manufacturing facility located in North Carolina. And so that facility is a 44,000 square foot facility that has all the makings of what a traditional pharmaceutical facility would have. We have a manufacturing space. We have actually two functioning labs, a micro lab and an analytical lab, as well as the utility space and a variety of computerized systems that we have here, including multiple MES process control systems that we have to support the industry from a training our own internal employees, but also training our clients, as well as some more initiatives that we've recently launched.
So, which takes me to the main topic here: the talent, skill building, talent management, and really upskilling not your own employees, but people in overall pharmaceuticals to make sure that the operation is ongoing, right? And the therapies are being delivered, and sometimes life-saving therapies are being delivered properly. So, what made you I wouldn't call it a pivot, but create that kind of a model factory that is designed to bring these capabilities and training to the industry?
Yeah, great question. And I think quite honestly, it's looking at the future and kind of having, I would like to claim a crystal ball, but there's no crystal ball. But seeing just a massive amount of growth in an industry. If we look at the pharmaceutical industry in general, it's got rapid market growth. I mean, over the next even 5 years from now, they're expecting to continue to grow over 10% annually, with over $800 billion by 2030. So when you look at that, our industry is expanding at a rapid pace. And so we saw that from a company perspective, knowing that there was no one company that could support and provide the services that are needed in the industry, and that just not only CQV, not only digital solutions, quite honestly, and operational readiness, all the different things there. And so we saw that and knew that one company couldn't do it, but we knew that in order to be prepared to be able to provide service to these companies, we had to get ahead of the curve because, quite honestly, in my career, when I was coming up and learning, we were doing training on the job. We were training as we were trying to execute a job. And so we learned quickly that that's not scalable. We need to be prepared and really build a training program that could prepare resources to be ready whenever the job came. And so that's what changed and was, quite honestly, what you said, a pivotal moment. It was a pivoting moment for our company to stop trying to train on the job and be more proactive in our approach.
And then as you were doing this for your own company and training the consultants ahead of time, then you realize that there's actually a need in the broader industry and more training possibilities for the customers as well. Right now, it's like a full-blown training facility with a real manufacturing equipment, departments from manufacturing to labs and utilities. So it's one of the, I've been to the facility. It's one of the greatest places I've been in the pharma industry and very forward-looking. So kudos on that. But the tagline, the main message that you want to give here, or if I'm understanding correctly, there's a talent crisis. There's a talent gap in pharma. So why is there a talent gap? Isn't AI supposed to fill that gap? Isn't machines already taking over our jobs? So what's going on? This is a little conflicting message from what I'm hearing on LinkedIn, rumor mills versus the realities that you are seeing on the ground floor.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I think we do have to hit at the point of why, and I'll hit on that first, and then maybe we can focus on the AI element and that. But as I had mentioned earlier, the rapid market growth is one of the things that is driving, need and the deficit, quite honestly. I mean, when we look at that, there's just a recent Deloitte study came out and said that 83% of companies are already struggling to find talent that they need, and they expect that to get worse. And so, quite honestly, AI is not solving that problem, at this point in time. I do think that AI will, at the end of the day, obviously make us be more efficient and effective at our jobs. But at the end of the day, we still need people, to support manufacturing. But if I look at that, not only that growth, but also look at the fact that all these companies are investing in digital solutions. They are making large investments in that. But here's the issue. We still have to have a workforce to have capabilities to use these systems and to be able to interact with them, and quite honestly, to help in the design of them. And so it doesn't go away. We still need resources and people to help in that. Not only that, we've got, investment in biologics and complex modalities that need specialized expertise, as well as, you mentioned earlier, the tariffs. What are the tariffs doing from a global perspective? Yeah, there's a lot of uncertainty about what this means, but when we look at this from a domestic perspective, and the reshoring that's happening right now. I mean, just yesterday, I believe, or today, Biogen just announced a $2 billion investment in manufacturing. Not only that, companies like Eli Lilly, J&J, Novartis have all pledged to invest in the domestic U.S. manufacturing facilities. And so the need for local talent's not going anywhere right now. Quite honestly, it's creating these regional bottlenecks where we've got to figure out how we're going to be to supply that. And then when we look at this, all those combined together create this essentially this demand and this deficit that we have. And then when you partner that with the fact that training and education pipelines really are not yet scaled to meet this demand, That's really where the risk comes in, and where we as a company are trying to position ourselves to solve this. And so, there are some companies, there are community college networks that are building partnerships with with the states and all that. That's actually working really well. But we're quickly seeing that they're out starting to become, overwhelmed with the amount of demand that they're seeing. And not only that, they have to build programs in order to be able to handle the cross functionality that's required, meaning you need engineers that know, right, how to operate these systems, that know about quality systems, and then you need manufacturing technicians that can actually use these automation systems that are being rolled out. And so it's a multifaceted issue there. It's not only about just finding people and getting these training programs up. It's understanding how cross-functional they need to be in order to be successful and to meet the digital transformation that's happening right now.
Okay, so let's peel that onion one layer at a time. First, you mentioned there's already a growth, like this is intrinsically a growing industry, 10% year over year. So, and on top of it, with the latest tariffs and the current administration incentives, many companies pledge to invest heavily in the US manufacturing, right? I think with one recent analysis we conducted, there's about almost $250 billion investment promised by at least 15 large pharma companies. So over the next 5 to 10 years, do you think all of this will come to life, or at least a significant portion? Any guess?
Great question. I mean, I have to go back to my crystal ball. I do. One of the things that I guess I don't say I'm skeptical, but we're watching and seeing how this thing's working. I do know that one of the realities that I'm getting and seeing from my perspective in the company is that these phone calls that are starting to happen, these requests for information and these RFPs are starting to pick up at a level that I've not seen before. So we are getting calls from these companies that it's not just a press release. We're actually getting the requests for support and starting to plan. So I'm optimistic that we are going to see this. Now, quite honestly, is all of it going to be invested? I don't know if I know how to spend 2 billion or 5 billion in the amount of time that some have pledged to do, but quite honestly, I'm optimistic about it. And we already are starting to see some of that movement.
So you are almost like a leading indicator in the industry. Like you heard the announcements, maybe that's one leading indicator, but in order to gauge if it is really happening, you're a talent producing organization. Therefore, if you're getting more frequent calls and RFPs, that's an early sign that the demand is at least picking up, right?
Correct.
So that's good news.
Correct.
Good news. So that's like high demand, which is going to grow even more. So that's one piece of the puzzle. The second part you mentioned is about, it's not a regular talent anymore. It's not like we need more engineers, pure play engineers. We need more quality specialists. We need more operations guys. But you're seeing a lot more cross functionality required to be successful. So tell me more about why existing university infrastructures cannot meet this demand or falling short of meeting this demand.
Yeah, and I definitely want to be careful because the institutions that I was part of, and I know you are part of, are great institutions, and they've been around for a long time, and they do really well at what they do. I think the challenge is the gap now is, first of all, you start at the fact that we learn theory in college, we learn about theory, and the application of theory to, when we get out in the workforce takes time, right? We have to be able to merge that gap. That's first and foremost. Second, we're actually partnering with several boards of universities to help facilitate now what we're calling this whole digital era of, hey, we need to make sure that we are starting to incorporate more than theory into our curriculums and from a college perspective. So, it's great that you learn I'll give you an example. It's great that you learn in control system, the whole Laplace transforms and control logic theory that you learn in school. But, what about the real life application that when I have an instrument out in the field, how does it communicate with a control system? Or, you know what I mean? Like the basics of that, quite honestly, I think get lost in the theory that we have to learn as a foundation from an engineering perspective. So what we're trying to do is bridge the gap there, and we're working with universities to incorporate more of this into their programs so that when students come out, they're already that much further ahead and they're able to pick up on exactly what they need to do. It's almost blending the gap between the community college technical model that we did from a where you go out there and you really just teach them ultimately what they're going to be doing. Now it's just merging those two. And so we're just encouraging that. And I mean, partnerships like with BTech at NC State, they are starting to position, students where they're getting application, they're getting that, and they're learning it, and they're combining theory with practical application as well. And then if you partner that with programs such as what we have here at Sequence, you add 8 more weeks of training on that, and then you get the light bulb moments start to happen. You start to see where students are connecting the theoretical with the real world application. And quite honestly, it's exciting to see. And then you begin to put those out there, and they're better prepared, to facilitate this transition. And quite honestly, as they learn all the different skills that they learn, from a cross-functional perspective, they're better built whenever we have to continue to change and the change at the pace we are going. They're almost prepared for that because they're almost learning how to learn, if that makes sense.
Well, this is a topic in large education institutions like universities that I'm part of as well. I'm supporting a number of universities in the advisory board capacity, and like how to make people a lifelong learners, right? Because when I graduated 20 years ago, I learned certain things. Some of them are still relevant because they're foundational, but most of them is missing the context, missing the latest technology that wasn't even existing. AI wasn't even a thing. Yes, there was some foundational things about AI, but the last couple of years, the way it picked up steam and the applications grew, like you almost need to relearn an entire field or domain to keep up. So just learning once and for your entire career being set is no longer an option. So you need to continue to learn and adapt and keep upskilling yourself and your teams. So you mentioned an 8-week program. Is this how would an education cycle like in a hands-on program like yours would look like? Is it like a one-time 8-week program? Is it spread across the career, someone's career, with check-ins in between every other year? Or how does that look like, based on what you found out as the most effective way of upskilling people?
Yeah, well, great question. I think the balance has to occur with any company that's going to take this on is there's an investment from a cost perspective, and we are balancing that, right, as a company, as I would expect anyone to do. But what we've done is built a very accelerated program where we coined the term. Well, I guess we didn't coin it, can't take ownership, but we talk about exposure here at Sequence, exposure versus experience. And so we differentiate those two terms because what we've done is we've concentrated the amount of content into a very short amount of time. So we expose them to exactly what they need to know in order to be able to do the job that they're going to do. Now, I understand that we also are teaching them about how to be, learners, and lifelong learners is very important, that how to learn, which I think quite honestly, most programs and that from an institution perspective teach students how to learn. If I go back to my college experience, quite honestly, it's one of the things I take away, not my knowledge of theory as much as how to learn. I show me a book and I can teach myself. Those were principles and things that I learned in college. But so what we've done here is we've applied an 8-week program. And so that 8-week program is broken up into 4-week blocks. And so the 4-week blocks are around systems and exposure to certain systems. And so, when we talked earlier about the different pillars and manufacturing or utilities or lab, we take instruments and equipment out of from those pillars, and we expose them to them during those 4-week blocks. And so they may get a utility system as far as their first 4-week block, and then they may get a manufacturing equipment in their second 4-week block. And the whole purpose of that is to take, from a CQV perspective, the life cycle and have them actually carry out hands-on, which this is the important part. Hands-on is where you really start to fully understand what you're doing. And so we actually have them carry out a project as if they were on a site with using that system for their example. And so, whether that's defining requirements or writing protocols and testing, to interacting with the client, like how to write emails, how to send meeting minutes, how to like, hey, there's a conversation that you're having. So it's all interjected with soft skills. So it's not just technical, it's also soft skills as well. And so those are built in 4-week blocks. And all throughout that, we actually put sabotages in the program. So it's not just a perfectly functioning piece of equipment. It's actually going to be something that's going to be purposely broken. And we hide those very well so that we know whether or not they are actually testing and doing it properly, because we expect to find errors. And if they don't, well, then we know that ultimately they missed something.
Mhm.
And so we have a training team dedicated to this whole process, whereas the training team acts as the client. And so they are the ones that are holding them accountable. They're the ones meeting with them and giving them feedback. And so it's feedback as they are going through the program as well. So I think that's very important that you provide feedback so that you can immediately, address an issue if there is one. But it's in a safe space. It's in a space, in an environment where they feel comfortable and okay to make a mistake, so that we can correct it before they actually go out to a client site.
Okay, so
Um,
that's like basically an accelerated learning, so that you can get up and running in shorter amount of time versus taking it on a real job, which on the job training can take months. This is basically squeezing it down to weeks. But let's
Correct.
go deeper, because I'm wondering, because like we understand the talent gap, we understand the huge demand coming, we understand the complexities now of like cross functionality. But what functional area you think there is more and more demand that you're trying to fill that gap? And what technical skills that are on demand, on increasing demand, that you're trying to supply these skills?
Yes, so great question. So quite honestly, we're hitting it from a standpoint of, we started with our core services. So we started with what we were focused on was more of CQV was where we started. That was an internal
Mhm.
challenge that we had to solve. Where this has naturally gone, and with that space, it was all about demand and what we were seeing in the market to help get facilities commissioned and qualified faster. So we heard a big coin term was speed to market, speed to market, speed to market. So it was like, all right, well, how do we help speed to market? Well, we need to be commissioned and qualified from a full facility, and we need better people to do that. That was number one. Quite honestly, it doesn't stop there, though. When it comes to digital solutions and when it comes to software solutions, what we found was implementations that take way too long because not the right people are involved in it. You don't have the right stakeholders when you're doing implementation. So we progressed right into that, and I'll notice that challenge. Well, when we got involved in that, there was through the tours and through experiences with customers, they were asking about operational readiness. Well, what do we do? Well, we can get a commissioned facility up, we can qualify it, we can have solutions out there. But what happens when we don't have manufacturing operations, or we don't have quality that is trained and ready to support such facilities? And so that doesn't help us from operational readiness. I mean, from a speed to market, if we can't run the facility that's now been qualified. So what does the
Mhm.
handover look like? And so we built training programs and started bringing in operators to actually start to train them in exactly what we were doing, but also providing them with the ability to be able to interact with these systems that we're implementing, to learn how to operate the equipment and to know where there are challenges with it, to learn how to work together. I mean, we've had clients in here before where they brought, operators in here, and even I talked about the safe space. It was amazing to watch operators in this space feel comfortable to say, I don't know how to do that. I'm concerned about this. And it was in this environment they felt safe to do that. Whereas when
Mhm.
you're in a multi-million-dollar facility, you might be a little less, you might be a little bit more or less hesitant to be like, I don't want to say I don't know how to do this. I'm just going to try to figure this out. And
Yeah.
so I don't know, the environment partnered with the hands-on element, I think we, ultimately have tackled all of those areas of what we're really tackling as a company. And quite honestly, I don't think we've just barely scratched the surface of where we can go. If you think about this, what about maintenance technicians? They got to go try to fix the
Mhm.
equipment when it breaks down. What about calibration technicians who are out there trying to calibrate these instruments? So it goes on and on and on and on. There's just endless opportunities when you have a facility at your hands with all these solutions.
So based on your description of the gaps and the needs, sounds like, especially with your focus being on the operational level, right? Not
Yes.
just the field of qualifying the facility, but then getting the operators ready to run that facility, right? What do you think is the gap or skill gap needs are in the the higher level in the organization, supervisors, managers, even executives who are coming maybe from another company, totally different way of running things, coming to this brand new facility that you're just qualifying, like what type of skill gaps are there, or are you attacking those areas, or what is your opinion on the skill gap there?
Yeah, not as much. So we have not really focused in on that gap. I do believe there is a gap there. Quite honestly, when we talk about talent gap and deficit, one of the things that's going to happen is you're going to have to bring in leadership and management from outside industry. So now you're going in a life science space where you don't have a lot of experience, and the regulatory requirements that are there, the different demands in regards to, we've got client demands. I mean, you got patient demands, and in this space, it's not the same as going out there and manufacturing a good that is a consumer good, right? This is some cases producing something that's a life-saving medication for someone. So at a leadership level, from an operations leadership level and all that, it's a different game. And so when we start to try to have to bring people into the organization, into the life sciences space, there's a gap there just inherently from what you're producing. And so,
Mhm.
and there's a lot of complexities there that I could further go into, but
Mhm.
that is definitely something that I would want
Yeah.
to try to address when I look at that from a talent perspective and deficit.
Yeah. So I mean, good that you're, addressing the lowest level, the operator level, all the training needs and the gap that we see. But I mean, I can attest to that, the need at the higher level and management level. I mean, we have had clients where different sites, different leadership might have different results because they have a different level of readiness from an organizational perspective,
Mm-hmm.
because change doesn't happen easily. You need to manage the change. You need to provide leadership. You need to be open to sometimes making mistakes and trying new things. And that all requires a higher level of skills in the management level. So I think what you're addressing from bottoms up needs to be complemented with a top-down leadership mindset and training and
Mm-hmm.
capability building, so that the whole industry can adapt to this increasing demand and new facilities, new technologies, and all of it combined. So one other thing that I heard with my other guests and in my discussions with customers is, like, it's also getting harder and harder to attract talent into the pharma industry specifically. Like, there are many industries competing for talent. Why would someone choose pharma as a career option versus anything else? What do you think some of the challenges in pharma specifics, and what is the industry doing to attract more talent?
Yeah, great question. I use the analogy that from a company perspective, we're all fishing from the same pond. And quite honestly, that pond's not big enough. And so when I think about trying to attract talent, as a company in general, the challenges is that the demand is so high right now, and we're all trying to get it from the same place. And what I mean by that is that we are trying to find talent that are already built with the skills we need today. And so we're approaching it from a recruiting only perspective. Like, this is an HR issue. Just go recruit and find them. We need this person. And quite honestly, every job you see is, I need somebody with 10 to 15 years of experience, and they're already this. So I think that has been a challenge when we're trying to recruit that way, because I think, just quite honestly, there's just not a lot of enough of it out there, based on the demand we have. But I think when it comes to how we recruit and what do we do? We don't just throw our hands up and we're just like, well, we're just not going to do this. No,
Mhm.
where we've approached this is, we've approached this from a standpoint of attracting talent coming out of universities, because quite honestly, a lot of them share the common passion that we do. I mean, I opened up with, why we get up out of bed every morning, and quite honestly, it's our passion to help people,
Mhm.
to make people's lives better. And so when you can look at someone and say that every day you get up out of bed, you're going to actually potentially change the life of someone. And I don't know if you've been a part, I know I've been a part of patient days where we go to sites and we actually get a chance to meet some of the patients. And I've had personal experience my own self where I've had a mother of a young child who was dependent on a therapy that I was supporting. And it was a therapy that child had to have every day in order to live. Like, it wasn't a
Mhm.
ibuprofen, or it wasn't a leave, or it wasn't like, oh, I have a headache. No, this was a therapy that patient had to have. And I remember sitting there and watching, and it was actually my brother who I work with in this industry. She walks up to him and she says, "Can I give you a hug?"
Mm,
And she said, "Because I just want you to know that my child depends on this, and what you guys are doing ultimately is saves and it's called allowing my child to live."
yeah.
And that's one of those moments where you talking about, I'm not trying to make this a statement to say I'm going to put this on the billboard to try to attract talent, but there's not much more you got to do to attract people to come to an industry than talk
Mhm,
about ultimately the lives you're changing. And so
yeah.
we found that when we call and align on that, the recruitment's easy from that regard because people want to help other people. I think the challenge is how do we prepare them so that number one, the industry will accept these folks into the industry because that's the hard part, right? They are looking for a 10 to 15-year person. They're not looking for a 1 year out of someone right out of school because they
Mhm,
believe they had to have 10 to 15 years of experience before they can come work. So we are tearing that down because we're saying no. Quite honestly, we can take someone out of school, we can apply this program, and we can provide you resources that can consult and provide value. And so when we're changing the game in our recruitment model, it was really based on people with the
mhm,
same passion and mission that we have for recruiting them and then applying the training so that they can be very effective in their job.
yeah.
But it's very difficult if you approach it the other way and just go to try to fish out of that same pond because quite honestly, the supply is not where it needs to be.
Yeah, and of course the costs are rising when you have a fewer people and everybody's trying to build a new site.
Hmm.
Everybody's announcing even bigger than previous companies like investment. "Oh, I'm going to build a $1 billion facility. I'm going to build a $2 billion
Yep.
facility. I'll do a $5 billion facility."
Yep.
Well, most of that money will go to people, and the prices go up, and it
Yep.
becomes unaffordable. And this is not the only the top 10, top 20, top 25 pharma companies. The industry has hundreds, if not thousands, of players,
Hmm.
right? Which drives up the labor cost, which then makes it impossible for the mid to lower segment to access talent. So
Yep.
it's actually creating even more problems
Yep.
to
Yep.
have this demand for more experienced people. So yeah, what you do is profound, and I think people who would like to choose this career sees that as something that is life changing and is helping some other people have their much needed medications to sustain their life of quality.
Yeah, and I think too, like the other part of this is that as a generation, I think the newer generations are hungry to learn, and so providing an environment where they have the ability to be lifelong learners and continuously learn, I think that's important too. And so I just think, quite honestly, our whole TA model now is about finding foundational, meaning that we've identified some core values that we live by and that we hold, that we want our employees to live by, and so we more recruit off of those than we do finding the perfect fit from someone
Mhm.
who already has the experience, and it does
Yeah.
open up our pool a little bit easier there.
So, Justin, let's switch gears towards the digital transformation, digital toolkit, and the fact that, I'll give you some numbers from industry. Maybe less than 4 or 5% of the pharma industry has, you know, been doing digital transformation. Most of the industry still relies on paper heavily. Even
Hmm.
those who have implemented, let's say, MES systems 10, 15 years ago, there's still a lot of paper out there. So this industry is little behind of the other industries, right? That's the reality. So now, but fast, it's changing. Everybody is
Hmm.
becoming more aware of the digital tools, the AI, with the introduction of Chat GPT, like large language models. Everybody is even more aware of what AI can do. So now everybody is exploring. There's not a company that would say, "Oh, I ignore these. It's not necessary. It's not relevant." Everybody's interested in doing something. Some of them are already doing it. So
Hmm.
how does this new forward-looking, more digital, more automation type demand affecting the talent building and upskilling? What percent of your program focuses on building the digital skills versus some foundational skills like problem solving, presentations, emails, etc.?
Hmm. Yeah, so we have a big focus right now. That's where we're focusing, and we're shifting focus to, or not shifting focus, but we're just adopting more and more into our training program. I think first and foremost, we have an initiative here where we're still staying focused on foundational knowledge, meaning that we don't want to jump the gun and go right into digital solutions without having an understanding about how they're being used and what they're being used for. We want them to understand that, hey, there's a manufacturing process that you're applying the software to. And I think that's important because, quite honestly, that's where a lot of solutions sort of lose their steam. And I think, quite honestly, is why when you talk about 4% of still only, there's 4%. Why is there such a small percentage that has gone down this journey? And I think they're scared to death of the implementation. They're scared to death to
Hmm.
take that jump because we've heard too many stories of companies that have gone that route and they end up, half implementing or a multi-year, multi-million dollar
Yeah.
implementation. And I think, quite honestly, it goes down to having people who have the knowledge and to be able to implement that and apply it and see that through the end. So I think having people upskilled to be able to do that's important. And so that's why we think foundationally we still teach the principles of this pharmaceutical manufacturing in general, the concepts of what it means to develop requirements, the life cycle, how to carry a project out, what are the deliverables and things that you need to focus on there, and then start to apply the software itself, meaning, hey, what is this software going to do? What is it replacing? Like, okay, we had paper batch records here. Now this is on screen. What does that mean? How do we integrate solutions? How do I make this solution talk to this solution? What do I do with that data?
Hmm.
And even important, you mentioned this earlier, but change controls or setting up boundaries in an implementation of a project. How do I set clear boundaries so that the scope doesn't continue to creep on me? Because guess what happens when you put a digital solution into a facility? The client sees it, and what do they want? They want more and more and more and more, right? And it's like, well, we
Yeah.
never did that before. Well, now
Yeah.
that I've got this ability, I want to scope creep happens. So
Yeah.
those are project management principles that people need to be aware of. So what we're doing in that regard is we're implementing project management strategies. We're implementing softwares and access to softwares, understanding how they can be used, where they're better utilized. So all of that is now a focus. I think the challenge we have, if I'm just fully transparent with you, is we're trying to bring employees back. And I know you asked me this question earlier. I didn't really answer it there, but after the 8-week program, there's an ongoing learning at Sequence, and so we want to bring employees back every year to actually participate and be a part of trainings that go on continuously. And so we do
Hmm.
start to expose them to different softwares as we have here. And we have
Yeah.
multiple softwares at this facility, and we want to get them access to it. And so that's been a big focus of ours, and starting to shift to that now as
Hmm.
we go.
Hmm. So give more exposure on different varieties of technologies, and then have a comfort level built up so that employees, operators, supervisors are more open to change,
Hmm.
and that's what one of the main reasons why majority of the digital transformation efforts fail is
Hmm.
because of the people element. They were
Yep.
not ready. They didn't feel comfortable. They didn't use it. And guess what? If a system is not used, it doesn't deliver any value.
No.
Even if it is the best system in the world, it doesn't deliver any value. And I think what the role you play is quite critical in making the industry open up to the change and more automation, more digital. Where do you see, like, there are many different areas of technology, right? There in a facility, in a pharma facility, there are solutions that are focused on monitoring real time what's going on, like
Hmm.
line monitoring, people monitoring, asset monitoring. There are solutions focused on execution. There are
Hmm.
solutions focused on compliance, like the logbooks and batch records. There's planning, scheduling, there's sustainability, there's utility. Like, so many different solutions are coming all at the same time to the
Hmm.
market in an industry which is not very open to change.
Right.
Which area of solution you see more traction and more demand out there that operators or overall, like, operations guys need to prepare themselves for?
That's a great question, and quite honestly, I sometimes I go every day and I'm evaluating softwares and looking at different solutions all the time, and it's coming from everywhere because, so I don't know that I mean, obviously, a lot of times now we look at is what's easy to implement. So like,
Hmm.
how do we eat an elephant one chunk at a time?
Hmm.
I think ultimately small bites, right? So it's like logbooks are always a very good start. It's pretty simple to start. It's just getting companies or getting different clients just starting to adopt getting digital and going digital, and so it's a good
Hmm.
place to start. So I would say, quite honestly, that generally is where it goes because it's easier to implement. So
Hmm.
what's fast? What's the fastest I can do to get today? But I think it's more about, I guess to answer it more fully, it's about data and getting access to data. Clients want access to data immediately, and some of them are starting to attack it from the top up rather than the bottom up. And so what they're
Hmm.
starting to do is start to say, hey, I want access to this information. And they go that route. And so they start looking for systems to collect the data, analyze the data, and then they quickly find out that they don't have access to the data that they need in order to do the analysis that they want to do. And
Hmm.
so that drives this whole sort of pause in that initiative, and then you start to kind of go from the bottom and
Hmm.
start trying to attack that one by one. All right, well, in order to know, what my equipment's doing, capacity of my equipment, I need to understand, is my equipment down? How often is my equipment down? There's just all kinds of things there. So
Hmm.
quite honestly, I believe logbooks, implementations such as that are ones that are a little less scary to implement, and therefore that's a
Hmm.
good place that people start. And there's a lot of different solutions out there available that you can do that are pretty low cost compared
Hmm.
to traditional, MES implementations or other solutions that were, like I said, multi-year. I think
Hmm.
those
Hmm.
days are gone, quite honestly.
Yeah.
Where it's 2-year implementations. I don't think those days are, I don't know. I don't want to say they're gone, but I just think more and more and more,
or
there's
at
just more
least
solutions that have
or
shorter
at least
implementations.
it's not affordable for majority of the market, and
Correct.
therefore it's not reachable by medium to small size companies. Even the large companies, because they have maybe invested in an MES, years ago,
Hmm.
they felt that pain and the long duration of implementation, so they don't want to repeat it again by upgrading. So
Yep.
I think, to complement what you're saying, I think industry is moving towards more modular solutions,
Hmm.
towards a more standard communication protocols like the UNS, for example,
Yep.
unified namespace, and
Hmm.
having different solutions speak the same language so they can solve one portion at a time, and they collect the whole overall, full digital factory platform eventually. Right,
Correct.
everybody's driving towards that. We're at the early beginnings of this change, but everybody will need to end up in a fully digital environment. Otherwise, we cannot talk about efficiency, risk management, quality in an efficient way, right? Like
Yep.
it is all people dependent without these tools.
Correct.
So, maybe like the last topic of discussion is, which is, I always end with advice to the new generation, the younger generation who is early in their career. They maybe stepped into pharma and they're like listening to this and they're like, what should I do? Like all these opportunities Justin talked about, I'm eager to learn. What advice would you give them? You can consider this as like an advice to younger self as well. Like
Mm.
go back 18 years or whatever, 15 years. What would you tell to yourself, having known everything that you know right now?
Yeah, I would really want to kind of tailor it around, I guess I'll say this in a way of saying never say no to an opportunity, whenever you get one that potentially could open up just doors that you wouldn't foresee. So don't be scared to say yes. Because I guess what I've learned is the opportunities that I've said yes to along the way that seemed very difficult, or quite honestly, I was even scared to death going into them, have been opportunities that have stretched me, and ultimately have opened up the doors for me in my career that I never thought were
Mhm.
possible. And so I just find that when we're very close-minded and we try to stay in a safe space, much like we feel when we go to the gym, we don't go to the gym and we don't work out, or we just keep doing the same weight. Yeah, it's comfortable, but it's not actually causing us to grow, right? When we grow is when we're actually feeling the pain from lifting and working
Yeah,
out. That's when we
yeah.
grow. And so I think saying yes to opportunities that may seem uncomfortable or a little bit out of our comfort zone, that's when we're stretched. And quite honestly, that's where we grow.
Yeah, I know a lot of guys who are avoiding the leg days because it's not very comfortable, and they have a really great upper body but skinny legs, who may not be like what you need when you grow old,
Yeah,
because you need those legs to carry you
yeah,
when you're old. Similar like analogy in the industry, like you need to train every muscle
yep,
and to be fully rounded and successful individual. That's
yeah.
great analogy and great recommendation. Justin, this has been a great chat. Appreciate it. I know we are just, like you said, just scratching the surface of even this topic. The reality is there is a talent shortage. The reality is it's projected to grow even more.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to do something. As individuals, we can respond to this opportunity as like training ourselves, upskilling.
Mm-hmm.
If we are managing teams, we can put our teams to a skill, like an education program like yours, or put together programs to grow everybody, especially paying attention to those cross functionality,
Yep.
right? What your own function will not get you again into the future, and the digital skills and digital literacy that in the future is expecting us. So these are all great areas, and I'm glad companies like Sequence exist. And thank you for attending today and sharing your knowledge and experience with us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.